The chamber was impossibly vast, a cathedral of light and sound suspended in the void of intergalactic space. Thousands of species, each more alien than the last, filled the tiers of the Intergalactic Council. Some shimmered like liquid mercury, others pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and a few were nothing more than sentient clouds of gas swirling in containment fields. The air, or what passed for it, buzzed with the hum of translators converting countless languages into something comprehensible to all. It was a spectacle of unity, a testament to the galaxy's shared pursuit of knowledge and order. And yet, at the very center of it all, stood two humans. They were laughably small compared to the towering forms of their peers. One was a wiry woman with wild curls that seemed to defy gravity, her lab coat patched with burn marks and hastily sewn repairs. The other was a broad-shouldered man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and an expression that hovered somewhere between exhaustion and defiance. Both wore the unmistakable badge of Earth's fledgling scientific delegation, a simple patch stitched with the outline of their tiny blue planet. The council chamber had been silent for several seconds now, an eternity in this place. The presiding entity, a crystalline being whose form refracted light into cascading rainbows, finally spoke, its voice resonating like chimes in a hurricane. "Humans," it began, "you stand accused of violating Article 17 of the Intergalactic Accord, reckless experimentation without proper oversight. Your actions have destabilized an entire star system. Do you deny these charges?" The woman stepped forward first, her boots clicking against the polished floor. She adjusted her glasses, a quaint relic from Earth's past, and cleared her throat. "We don't deny anything," she said, her voice carrying an edge that made even the gaseous entities ripple uneasily. "But if you're going to accuse us, you'd better understand what we were doing." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Denial or groveling was expected. Defiance was not. The crystalline presider tilted its faceted head. "Explain yourselves," it said. The man stepped up now, dragging a battered metal case behind him. He set it down with a thud that echoed through the chamber and flipped it open to reveal a chaotic tangle of wires, blinking lights, and what appeared to be duct tape holding several components together. "This," he said, gesturing toward the contraption like a proud parent showing off their child's macaroni art, "is why we did it." Another wave of murmurs surged through the assembly. A gelatinous being emitted a series of wet plopping sounds that translated roughly to, "What is that primitive monstrosity?" The woman smirked. "This monstrosity, as you call it, is what we humans call ingenuity." "Ingenuity," echoed a voice from somewhere in the crowd. A serpentine creature coiled around its podium. "You destabilized an entire star system with that." "Not just destabilized," the man corrected, grinning now. "We saved it." The presider's crystalline form dimmed slightly, a sign of skepticism among its kind. "Elaborate." The woman crossed her arms and leaned forward as if addressing an unruly classroom. "You see, when humans research something, when we really put our minds to it, we don't follow your neat little rules or your tidy methodologies. We experiment. We fail spectacularly. And then we try again, and again," added the man. "And again," she agreed, nodding. "Until we get it right." They finished in unison. The presider's light refracted sharply, a sign of irritation. "And how does this justify your actions?" The woman sighed and gestured toward their device. "That star system you're so upset about? It was on the verge of collapse long before we got there. Its sun was dying, faster than any natural process should allow. We figured out why." The man interjected, his voice rising with excitement now. "Some ancient tech buried deep in one of its planets. Tech none of you bothered to investigate. Was siphoning energy from the star. And we stopped it," she said simply. "By blowing it up," he added with a shrug. A collective gasp filled the chamber. "You detonated ancient technology," hissed a being composed entirely of shifting geometric shapes. "Yeah," said the man unapologetically. "And in doing so, we stabilized the star for another few billion years." The presider's light flickered dangerously close to ultraviolet, a sign of barely contained outrage among its kind. "You acted without consulting this council or any authorized scientific body. Your methods were reckless. Your tools primitive. You endangered countless lives. And yet, said the woman coolly, it worked. The chamber fell silent again, not out of respect but sheer disbelief. That's what you don't understand about us humans, she continued, pacing now like she was giving a lecture back on Earth. We don't have your advanced tech or your centuries-long lifespans to ponder every decision into oblivion. We're scrappy. We're messy. But when things are falling apart, when there's no time left, you want us in your corner. The man nodded emphatically. Because we'll do whatever it takes to fix it, even if it means breaking a few rules along the way, she added with a smirk. For several long moments, no one spoke, or whatever passed for speaking among beings without mouths or vocal cords. Then, slowly but surely, one by one, members of the council began emitting signs of reluctant agreement. Soft hums from bioluminescent creatures, faint ripples from gaseous entities, and even an approving chime from one particularly ancient crystalline delegate. Finally, the presider spoke again, its tone begrudging but measured. Your methods are unconventional and your actions reckless, beyond measure. It paused before adding reluctantly, but your results cannot be denied. The humans exchanged triumphant grins. However, continued the presider sharply, cutting their celebration short, this council will deliberate further on whether your species is fit to continue participating in intergalactic research endeavors. Take your time, said the woman cheerfully as she picked up their battered device. We've got more experiments to run anyway, added the man with a wink. And as they walked out of that vast chamber, two tiny figures against an infinite backdrop, the murmurs began anew. Whispers not just about their audacity, but about their results, and perhaps even their potential. Because for all their flaws, for all their chaos, humanity had proven one thing beyond doubt. When faced with impossible odds and insurmountable challenges, humans didn't just survive. They thrived. The story of how those two humans, Dr. Elena Vasquez and Dr. Adrian Cole, rose to stand before the Intergalactic Council as Earth's unlikely champions was as improbable as it was inevitable. Humanity had always thrived on adversity, and their brilliance was forged in the crucible of a world that demanded ingenuity just to survive. Elena had grown up in the sprawling megacities of Earth's equatorial belt, where the air shimmered with heat and the skies were choked with smog. Her family lived in one of the towering arcologies that stretched into the clouds, a labyrinth of recycled steel and glass built to house millions. Resources were scarce, and opportunities scarcer still, but Elena had one thing that set her apart: an insatiable curiosity. As a child, she would scavenge discarded tech from the arcology's lower levels: broken drones, obsolete processors, shattered solar panels, and cobble them together into crude machines. By the time she was 12, she had built her first fusion-powered generator out of scrap parts, providing her family with reliable electricity for the first time in years. By 16, she was hacking into orbital satellites to download restricted scientific databases. She didn't do it for fame or fortune. She did it because she needed to know how things worked. Adrian's path was different, but no less extraordinary. He grew up in the icy wastelands of what had once been northern Canada, where survival meant battling sub-zero temperatures and relentless storms. His family were nomads, moving from one geothermal outpost to another, eking out a living by repairing broken machinery for other settlers. Adrian learned early on that failure wasn't an option. If he couldn't fix a heating unit or patch a ruptured water line, people would die. By the time he was 20, Adrian had become a legend among the scattered communities of the North. He could jury-rig a plasma welder from spare parts or coax life back into ancient machinery long thought dead. But what set him apart wasn't just his technical skill. It was his ability to think outside the box. When faced with a problem no one else could solve, Adrian would stare at it for hours, sometimes days, until inspiration struck like lightning. Their paths crossed at Earth's last great bastion of higher learning, the International Institute for Advanced Research, a sprawling campus orbiting high above the planet in geosynchronous orbit. The Institute was humanity's desperate gamble, a place where its brightest minds could work together to find solutions to problems that threatened their very survival: climate collapse, resource depletion, overpopulation. Elena arrived at the Institute as a brash young prodigy, who had already published groundbreaking papers on energy systems before she even set foot in its halls. Adrian came as an outsider, a self-taught engineer whose unconventional methods had earned him both admiration and skepticism. They should have clashed immediately. Instead, they became inseparable. Their partnership began with an argument over a malfunctioning particle accelerator. Elena insisted on recalibrating its magnetic fields using precise mathematical models. Adrian wanted to bypass half its systems entirely and reroute power through an improvised circuit. Neither approach worked on its own, but when they combined their ideas, they not only fixed the accelerator, but improved its efficiency by 300%. From that moment on, they were a team. Elena brought theoretical brilliance and an uncanny ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. Adrian brought raw ingenuity and an unshakable belief that no problem was unsolvable if you were willing to get your hands dirty. Together, they tackled some of humanity's greatest challenges, designing self-repairing habitats for colonists on Mars, developing nanotechnology capable of purifying entire oceans, even creating artificial ecosystems that could thrive in deep space. Their work earned them accolades and respect, but also enemies. The Intergalactic Council had been watching Earth for decades by this point, monitoring its progress with a mix of fascination and disdain. Humanity's rapid technological advancement was impressive, but also alarming. After all, this was a species that had nearly destroyed itself more than once through war and environmental neglect. When Earth finally made contact with the wider galaxy, an event known simply as First Light, the Council extended an invitation for humanity to join its ranks. But it came with strings attached. Strict regulations on research and development designed to prevent reckless experimentation. For most human scientists, these restrictions were stifling, but not for Elena and Adrian. They saw them not as obstacles, but as challenges to be overcome. If they couldn't test their ideas openly under Council oversight, they would find ways to do so in secret. And so began their most audacious project yet, Project Aegis. It started with whispers among Earth's scientific community, rumors of a mysterious experiment being conducted far beyond Council jurisdiction. Officially, Aegis was a study of stellar dynamics. Unofficially, it was an attempt to harness the energy of dying stars and use it to power entire civilizations. The risks were astronomical, literally, but Elena and Adrian thrived under pressure. They worked tirelessly in a hidden laboratory aboard an unregistered research vessel, pushing themselves and their equipment to the breaking point. There were setbacks, catastrophic failures that would have ended lesser scientists' careers, but each time they picked themselves up and tried again. In the end, they succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Using technology cobbled together from salvaged alien artifacts and human ingenuity, they created a device capable of stabilizing unstable stars by redirecting their energy flows, a feat no other species had ever achieved. But their triumph came at a cost. The experiment that saved one star system inadvertently destabilized another, a mistake born not of negligence but urgency. When word reached the Intergalactic Council, it triggered an immediate investigation and brought Elena and Adrian face to face with galactic judgment. Now here they stood before the Council, not as criminals or renegades, but as representatives of humanity itself. Their journey from Earth's struggling scientists to intergalactic pioneers had been anything but smooth. But then again, nothing worth doing ever was. And as they prepared for whatever came next, whether exile or vindication, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't done surprising the galaxy yet. The murmurs of the Council chamber swelled, a cacophony of alien languages and skepticism. The crystalline presider's light refracted sharply, signaling the assembly's growing impatience. Elena and Adrian stood their ground in the center of the chamber, their battered device still humming faintly at their feet. They weren't here to plead for forgiveness or seek approval. They were here to make a point. And if there was one thing humanity excelled at, it was turning a debate into a battlefield. The presider's voice cut through the din like a blade. Humans, you claim your actions were necessary to prevent catastrophe. Yet your methods were reckless, your tools primitive, and your understanding incomplete. How can you justify such hubris? Elena stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back in a posture that was almost casual. Hubris, she repeated, her tone sharp enough to draw the attention of even the gaseous entities swirling in their containment fields. You think we acted out of arrogance? Let me tell you something about humans. We don't have the luxury of waiting for perfect solutions. Adrian chimed in, his deep voice carrying across the chamber like a low rumble of thunder. You call our tools primitive, but that's because we've had to make do with what we have. While your species evolved in stable environments with abundant resources, we clawed our way out of chaos. Our planet threw everything it had at us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, mass extinctions. And we survived. Not just survived, Elena added, her eyes blazing with intensity. We thrived. We adapted. We learned to turn adversity into opportunity. And that's why we're standing here today. A serpentine delegate coiled around its podium hissed in response, its voice translating into an icy monotone. Adaptation through desperation is not a virtue. It is chaos masquerading as progress. Elena raised an eyebrow and gestured toward the council chamber itself, a marvel of engineering suspended in the void of space. And what about this place? You think it was built by playing it safe? Every species in this room has faced moments where they had to take risks, calculated or otherwise, to survive and grow. The crystalline presider's light dimmed slightly as it responded. Risk is acceptable when guided by knowledge and oversight. Your actions lack both. Adrian let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Oversight? Let me tell you what oversight looks like where we come from. Committees arguing for years while people starve or freeze because no one wants to take responsibility. Oversight is great when you've got time to spare. But when you're staring down the barrel of extinction, you don't get that luxury. A being composed entirely of shifting geometric shapes emitted a series of clicks and hums that translated into words dripping with disdain. Your argument relies on emotional appeals rather than empirical evidence. This council operates on logic and reason. Logic and reason? Elena shot back, her voice rising with passion now. Fine, let's talk logic and reason. The star system we intervened in was destabilizing because of ancient technology left behind by some long-dead civilization. None of you bothered to investigate it because it wasn't your responsibility, but we did. We figured out what was happening, and we fixed it by destroying irreplaceable artifacts, the geometric being countered. Artifacts that were killing an entire system. Adrian thundered, his fists clenched at his sides. What good is preserving history if it comes at the cost of countless lives? Sometimes you have to make hard choices. The presider's crystalline form pulsed with light as it addressed them again. Your argument assumes that destruction was the only option available, a conclusion born from limited understanding. Elena took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down before replying. You're right. We didn't have all the answers when we acted. But that's what science is, stepping into the unknown and figuring it out as you go. If we waited for perfect understanding before taking action, nothing would ever get done. Adrian nodded in agreement, his voice steady but firm as he added, and let's not pretend your counsel is infallible. I've read your archives. There are plenty of examples where you got things wrong because you were too cautious or too arrogant to admit you didn't know everything. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber at his words, a rare moment where even beings without faces seemed visibly uncomfortable. Elena seized the moment, stepping closer to their device and gesturing toward it like a magician revealing her greatest trick. This machine? It's not perfect. It's held together with duct tape and hope. But it worked because we dared to try something no one else would. And that, Adrian said, his voice rising with conviction now, is what makes us human. We take risks because we believe in possibilities others can't see yet. The presider remained silent for several long moments as its crystalline facets shifted slightly, a sign that it was deliberating internally or consulting its peers telepathically. Finally, it spoke again, its tone measured but tinged with something almost resembling curiosity. You argue passionately for your species' approach to science, an approach rooted in improvisation and urgency rather than precision and caution. It paused before continuing, but passion alone cannot justify recklessness. Elena smiled faintly, a smile that carried both defiance and determination. Then let us prove ourselves, she said simply. Adrian nodded beside her. Give us access to your resources, your labs, your data, and let us show you what humans can do when we're not working with scraps. Another wave of murmurs rippled through the chamber as delegates exchanged glances, or whatever passed for glances among beings without eyes. The presider's light flickered once more before dimming slightly, a sign of reluctant agreement among its kind. Very well, it said finally. This council will grant you provisional access to our facilities under strict supervision. Its tone hardened as it added, but be warned, any further recklessness will result in immediate expulsion from this body, and possibly worse. Elena and Adrian exchanged triumphant grins before turning back toward the council. Deal, Elena said confidently. And as they prepared to leave the chamber once more, this time not as defendants but as pioneers, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't just here to survive. They were here to change everything. The provisional access granted by the Intergalactic Council was supposed to be a leash, a way to keep humanity's unpredictable scientists under control. But for Elena and Adrian, it was an open door, a challenge to prove what humans could do when given the same resources as the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. And they intended to kick that door wide open. The Council assigned them a sterile research facility on a neutral moon orbiting a gas giant in the Zanara system. It was state-of-the-art, equipped with technologies so advanced that even Elena, who had hacked into alien databases for fun, was momentarily awestruck. The lab's walls shimmered with adaptive nanomaterials, its equipment capable of manipulating matter at quantum scales. It was a playground for any scientist, but it came with conditions. Every experiment would be monitored, every result scrutinized by council-appointed overseers. The overseers were an eclectic mix of species, a gelatinous entity that communicated through bioluminescent pulses, a towering insectoid with multifaceted eyes that seemed to see everything, and a crystalline being whose mere presence made the air hum with tension. They weren't there to help. They were there to judge. Let them watch, Adrian muttered as he unpacked their battered equipment onto one of the pristine lab tables. They're going to need front-row seats for this. Elena smirked but said nothing, already diving into the schematics they'd drawn up during the long journey to Zanara. Their goal wasn't just to replicate their previous success. It was to surpass it. They wanted to create something so undeniable, so transformative, that even the most skeptical council member would have no choice but to acknowledge humanity's brilliance. Their project was ambitious, a universal energy stabilizer capable of harnessing and redistributing power across entire star systems. It would make unstable stars safe, prevent supernovae from destroying nearby planets, and provide limitless energy for civilizations in need. It was the kind of invention that could reshape the galaxy, and it was exactly the kind of risk no other species would dare take. The work was grueling. For weeks, they barely slept, surviving on nutrient packs and sheer determination. The overseers hovered constantly, questioning every decision, every calculation. Your methodology is inefficient. The crystalline being would chime in whenever Adrian resorted to duct tape or improvised components. This approach is unorthodox. The insectoid would buzz whenever Elena bypassed standard protocols. But their criticisms only fueled the humans' resolve. You know what I've noticed? Adrian said one evening as he soldered together a circuit board using a tool he'd cobbled together from alien parts and human ingenuity. These guys are so obsessed with doing things the right way that they've forgotten how to think outside the box. Elena nodded without looking up from her terminal, where she was running simulations at breakneck speed. They've been at this for so long they've gotten complacent. They don't innovate anymore. They just refine what already exists. And that's why we're going to beat them, Adrian said with a grin. And beat them they did. The breakthrough came late one night, or whatever passed for night on a moon with no atmosphere or natural light cycles. Elena had been poring over energy flow equations while Adrian tinkered with their prototype stabilizer when suddenly everything clicked. Adrian, she said sharply, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the lab. He looked up from his workbench, immediately recognizing the look in her eyes. The look she got when she was about to change everything. I've got it, she said simply. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity as they implemented Elena's new design. The overseers watched in stunned silence as the humans worked with an intensity that bordered on madness, pushing themselves and their equipment to the limit. Finally, it was ready. A sleek device no larger than a human torso, but packed with enough power to alter the fate of entire star systems. They called it Aegis Prime. The first test took place on an unstable star in a nearby system, a star that had been deemed unsalvageable by Council scientists centuries ago. The Council delegates gathered aboard an observation vessel, their skepticism palpable as they watched Elena and Adrian prepare their device for deployment. "This is reckless," muttered the crystalline overseer, its facets dimming with disapproval. "Reckless is what we do best," Adrian shot back as he activated Aegis Prime. The device launched toward the star like a comet, its surface shimmering with energy as it approached critical proximity. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the star's violent flares began to stabilize. Its chaotic energy flows smoothed into harmonious patterns, its deadly radiation subsiding into harmless light. The chamber aboard the observation vessel erupted into chaos as alien delegates scrambled to process what they had just witnessed. Even the overseers were stunned into silence. "It worked," Elena said softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion but also triumph. Adrian leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "Damn right it did." But their victory wasn't met with universal acclaim. As word of their success spread throughout the Council and beyond, resentment began to fester among certain factions. Humanity's rapid rise, from backwater newcomers to intergalactic innovators, was seen by many as an affront to established hierarchies. "They're dangerous," hissed one delegate during a heated council session days later. "Their methods are unpredictable. They could destabilize everything we've built." "They're effective," countered another delegate reluctantly. "We cannot deny their results." The debate raged on, but one thing became clear. Humanity's ingenuity had made them indispensable, and that terrified those who had grown comfortable in their dominance over galactic affairs. Elena and Adrian were summoned back before the Council once more, not as defendants this time, but as disruptors of an ancient order. "You have proven your capabilities," the presider said coldly, as its crystalline form refracted light into sharp angles. "But your methods remain troubling." Elena stepped forward again, her voice steady despite the weight of countless alien eyes upon her. "Troubling because we succeeded where you failed. Troubling because we dared to try." Adrian joined her, his tone blunt and unapologetic. "We didn't come here to play by your rules. We came here to solve problems. And if that makes you uncomfortable, well, maybe it's time you started asking yourselves why." The chamber fell silent once more, not out of respect this time, but out of fear. Because for all their differences, for all their chaos, humanity had proven one thing beyond doubt. They weren't just survivors or innovators. They were revolutionaries, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The council chamber was silent, a silence so profound it seemed to stretch across the stars. Elena and Adrian stood at the center of it all, their battered device, a symbol of humanity's ingenuity, still humming faintly at their feet. The crystalline presider, whose refracted light had once been sharp with skepticism, now glowed with a subdued brilliance. Around them, the thousands of alien delegates sat in stunned contemplation, their forms, liquid, gaseous, metallic, and organic, betraying emotions they could no longer hide. It had taken weeks of deliberation after the successful deployment of Aegis Prime. Weeks of heated debates among council members who struggled to reconcile their disdain for humanity's methods with the undeniable results. The unstable star that had threatened an entire system was now a beacon of stability. Planets that had been on the brink of annihilation were thriving again. And the humans, those scrappy, unpredictable newcomers, had done what no one else could. Finally, the presider spoke, its voice resonating like a symphony of chimes. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, Dr. Adrian Cole, this council has reached its decision." Elena and Adrian exchanged a glance, equal parts exhaustion and defiance. Whatever the verdict, they were ready to face it together. The presider's facets shifted, casting rainbows across the chamber as it continued. "Your actions have challenged the very foundations of this council's principles. Your methods were unorthodox, your tools primitive by our standards, and your disregard for protocol, alarming." It paused, letting the weight of its words settle over them. But, it added, its tone softening ever so slightly, your results are undeniable. You have demonstrated not only ingenuity, but courage in the face of impossible odds. You have reminded us all that progress often requires risk, and that innovation cannot thrive without boldness. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Not dissent this time, but reluctant agreement. Therefore, the presider continued, this council recognizes your contributions to intergalactic science and declares you recipients of the highest honor we can bestow, the Medal of Galactic Innovation. The chamber erupted into an explosion of sound. Cheers from some delegates, begrudging applause from others, and even a few disgruntled hisses from those who still resented humanity's rise. But none of that mattered to Elena and Adrian as they stepped forward to receive their medals. Intricate crystalline constructs that shimmered with an inner light as if alive. As the presider placed the medals around their necks, or in Adrian's case, awkwardly draped it over his shoulder due to its size, it addressed them directly. Your actions have not only saved a star system, but also reminded us all of what it means to be scientists, to question, to explore, and to dare. Elena smiled faintly as she adjusted her medal. We didn't do it for recognition, she said simply. We did it because it needed to be done. Adrian grinned beside her. But hey, we'll take the shiny medals too. The chamber erupted into laughter, a rare moment of levity in a place so often weighed down by formality. Back on Earth, news of their triumph spread like wildfire. Humanity watched in awe as images of Elena and Adrian standing before the Intergalactic Council were broadcast across every screen on the planet. For a species that had so often been dismissed as insignificant by the wider galaxy, this was a moment of vindication, a moment when Earth's brightest minds had proven that they belonged among the stars. The benefits were immediate and profound. With their newfound recognition came access to technologies and resources humanity could only dream of before. Advanced medical treatments that eradicated diseases long thought incurable. Energy systems that transformed Earth into a model of sustainability. Agricultural innovations that ended hunger once and for all. Elena and Adrian became household names, not just on Earth but across countless worlds. They were invited to speak at universities on distant planets, their lectures translated into hundreds of alien languages. Statues were erected in their honor on Earth and beyond, one depicting Elena with her wild curls and fierce determination, another capturing Adrian with his perpetual grin and calloused hands. But despite their fame, they remained true to who they were. Scientists driven by curiosity and a relentless desire to solve problems. One evening, back aboard their orbital lab overlooking Earth, a lab now equipped with alien tech, so advanced it made their old equipment look like toys. They sat together watching the planet spin below them. Think they'll ever stop calling us reckless? Adrian asked with a smirk as he tinkered with yet another prototype. Elena chuckled softly as she sipped her coffee. Real coffee now, thanks to an alien trade deal they'd negotiated personally. Probably not, she said, but I think I'm okay with that. Adrian leaned back in his chair and gazed out at the stars beyond Earth's atmosphere. You know, he said after a moment, we've come a long way from duct tape and spare parts. Elena nodded thoughtfully before adding with a sly smile, but let's be honest, we're still going to use duct tape? They both laughed, a sound that echoed through their lab like music. And as they looked out at the endless expanse of space before them, filled with challenges yet to be faced and mysteries yet to be solved, they knew one thing for certain. Humanity's story was just beginning. Because if there was one truth about humans, one thing no alien species could ever deny, it was this. When faced with impossible odds and insurmountable challenges, humans didn't just survive. They thrived, and they made damn sure everyone knew it.